Hello, and welcome into SEC Country's Bud Light's Prediction Amongst Friends. I'm your host, Hans Heiser. Appreciate you guys being us here on this Wednesday afternoon as we head into Week 6 of the college football season. It's hard to believe that time has already flown by, and here we are, smack dab in the middle of fall, and SEC races are heating up both in the East. Well, I kind of lied. Maybe just in the East. Let's bring in Alex Martin-Smith from Nash Vegas, as we do each and every week. Alex, good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you too. I missed you. Just been sitting in this chair for 7 days waiting for you to call me back.
Hey, we've been going back and forth. I haven't completely written you off, man. It is good to see you. Alex, by the way, does great stuff on SEC Country, putting out great content each and every day. You can follow him on Twitter at asmith. That's A-S M-I-F-F on Twitter. So be sure to do that. He is a great follow, very insightful college football fan. So let's take a look at some of the where we're at with the rankings right now as far as you and me and some of the favorites so far in the SEC play. And, you know, week to week we're not having that many surprises, but I think if you take a look at the schedule and the favorites this year, so far 37-8. That's an 822 clip. And then you look at my record and your record, 32-3 for me, and then 35-10 for you. So not so bad, but we got a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think what those numbers tell me is that I've been actively worse than the favorites, and people probably would have been better off just not listening to my advice. But I hope I can start turning that around this week.
Well, we've had so many great games, and I think last week you and I were on I think everybody in the nation was. It was a 20.5-point spread. And you said, Alex, out of the three last games, you had the Kentucky game, the LSU game, and I believe there was one other one that we pretty much had written off in Alabama as big favorites. And, of course, you said don't be surprised if one of these teams falls, and you talked about how competitive Troy was against LSU last year, but you just figured a night game in Baton Rouge, 20.5-point spread. No way could Edo's crew lay an egg down there. And, I mean, it was 24-7 in the fourth quarter, Alex.
Yeah, listen, I told you. And you look back to the Nick Saban era, you look at the Les Miles era, both of them got scares from Troy. Troy only lost to Clemson last year by 6 points at Clemson, and they brought back a lot of talent this year. So I think all the pieces were in place, especially when you factor in, that LSU isn't a very good football team this year. I think all the pieces were in place, and I should have had a little more moxie, a little more chutzpah. I should have made that decision there to go with Troy.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about LSU. On the road, taking on their cross-division rival this week in Gainesville, taking on the Florida Gators. And you see right there, it's a 3:30. Hey, Alex, we know one thing. It's going to be better than the last two CBS games. You got to think, right?
Well, you hope so. I think we're still waiting for LSU to awaken from their coma or whatever they're in. But Florida's a perfect team to do that against because they don't seem very confident right now either. They moved the ball running against Vanderbilt, but they're sort of back to square one at quarterback with Felipe Franks because Luke Del Rio's gone for the season with collarbone injury now. So I think we're still waiting on Florida's offense to show a little more balance. And LSU hopefully is going to come to this game and provide a little bit of defense, which they haven't been doing as much of the past couple of games. But I think they do have enough athletes on the defensive side of the ball to give Florida some trouble.
Well, and you got to figure both teams are going to get up for this game. These guys don't like each other. This is a slobber knocker affair every single year, regardless of where these two teams are in the standings. But let's talk a little bit about LSU, in particularly offensively. I mean, what are you seeing out of these guys? I know Geis has been hurt a little bit. They haven't been able to run the football the way they'd like to. Etling hasn't really been the answer at quarterback. But offensively, Matt Canada is supposed to be the boy wonder here. What offensively is the problem with LSU right now?
Well, at this point of the year, you would expect to look at, a stat line like LSU's, and you look at Geis and a couple of his backups, and they'd be averaging 7 or 8 yards a carry. But it's not just that Geis has been missing time, it's that he hasn't even been that effective when he's in the game. I think he's averaging 4.8 a clip, which is good for the NFL, but not at this stage of an NCAA football season. So I think he's been lacking. The offensive line is a huge part of that. And the fact that they can't find any consistency in the passing game either, much like Florida. So they've decided that they're going to start Danny Etling again this week, and he's going to play the entire game. So they're going to try to keep Miles Brennan on the bench. And I do like this because I think Etling has shown flashes at least of being able to make the big play. But is he going to come out and have a big game? I don't think that's going to be the case. So keep an eye on him because they've sort of promised to keep him in the whole game. What's it going to take to maybe send him back to the bench and send in Miles Brennan?
A couple messages coming in on our Facebook Live page. Be sure to hit us up saying the Gators are on the rise. Now, this is something I want to talk about today and get your take on, Alex. Baptism by fire for these freshmen. Malik Davis, you look at his carries, 1 carry against Michigan, 4 the next week, 21 and 17 the last couple weeks. He is without doubt the feature back there now. They don't use him a lot in the passing game. This is a freshman. Kadarius Toney, he's a guy who's used in the passing game. He's a guy who's a wide receiver, runs the ball a little bit, special teams, a freshman. And now you got Felipe Franks, without question, they're going to be the quarterback the rest of the season. Whether or not, and you look at the schedule for Florida, I mean, I'm just going to pull it up here real quick. If they can somehow, you got LSU, Texas A&M at home, then you got the Georgia-Florida game, at Missouri, at South Carolina, UAB, and Florida State playing without a quarterback, a team really struggling right now. Say what you want to say about Florida. I think because of this inexperience on offense at the playmaking position, they're going to get better as the season goes along, and they're going to be a hard out for a lot of football teams. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're right. I was laughing because I saw I don't know if it was a meme or whatever you want to call it, this past week where it asked, is Jim McElwain just conducting some sort of experiment, like trying to figure out just how bad of a team you can have and still win the SEC East, because this is the 3rd straight year they've been trending down, but they're still in, that SEC East conversation. They're still tied with Georgia at the top. And that game in Jacksonville at the end of October could decide the division. Whether it does or not, I don't know. There's still a lot of football to be played, but I don't think Florida looks like a championship team right now. And that's even on the east side, but they haven't really had that spark the last couple of years either, and they've ended up in Atlanta by pulling out some of these games, notably the game against LSU last year, which got switched over to Baton Rouge, and everybody expected LSU to win that one. So, it's been a sort of a wild ride for Gators fans that it's been 2 straight East titles, and they're on top of the East right now, and people are still upset with how this program looks. It's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I think you and I both like Florida this weekend. LSU has not looked good. I think the Gators, a team on the rise. And so look for Florida to get the win down in Gainesville on Saturday and move to 4-0 in the SEC. Hey, McElwain just keeps getting it done, but we'll see. Be a big win for LSU. They can find a way to get it done. Hey, guys, we are brought to you by Bud Light. Don't forget, huddle up with your friends and some ice cold Bud Light. And that's being amongst friends all season long. Moving along, the Georgia Bulldogs, the surprise story of the SEC this year. People thought that they would be improved, but how much improved? That was the question, a true test early on at Notre Dame. They got the win. They've carried that momentum on in the season, destroying Mississippi State at home, embarrassing Tennessee and Knoxville, and now they go on the road to take on a Vanderbilt team who's feeling a little bit hurt as well after what's happened to them the last couple weeks.
Yeah, Georgia's been extremely impressive, and they've done enough to really warrant that talk on the national level that, hey, could this be a playoff team? Could this be a challenger for Bama? I think at this point they've at least earned the right to be in that conversation. And especially, look at this last week at Tennessee. I thought Georgia would win, but I thought Tennessee was going to give them a good game, just sort of the type of game that if people are counting out the balls, they got so much talent and they play well in these close games sometimes. They just got blown out of the water. And I think that's really a testament to how strong the Georgia defense is right now. Everybody knows that their running game is one of the best in the country. The book is still out a little bit on Jake Fromm. I think he is a very talented quarterback and have great game plans for him on a weekly basis. But I also think that he's one bad game away from losing his spot again, a little bit of musical chairs. I mean, he's really not so secure that they won't just throw Jacob Eason back in there if Fromm struggles for a game or two.
Yeah, I think if he struggles for a game or two, he would have to equal into a loss. So long as his team keeps winning, I don't see them making a change as far as the starter's concerned. I think Eason will get his playing time, but Georgia's been more than impressive to me this year. They have exceeded so many expectations, and I want to talk on Fromm a little bit. The 2 plays he made with his feet last week, I think that's the separation that you get as a Georgia fan, if you're the Georgia coaching staff, when you assess these 2 players, what the difference is, who gives us the better chance to win, because his ability to extend plays and make things happen down the field with his legs is something that Jacob Eason just can't do.
I think so. And Fromm is sort of this old school athlete aspect to him where, yes, he can throw the ball all over the field. And I'm really excited over the next couple of years to see just how great of an NFL prospect he can become. But he also has sort of that killer instinct as an athlete where he might not run on you the entire game, and then he'll pull out like a 25, 30-yard run or a huge touchdown run or whatever it is. He can sneak up on you athletically. And it's just, it's one of these, 4-star, 5-star quarterbacks these days who can sort of do it all. And I think it does give Georgia offense a little bit more a wrinkle than when Eason is in, because Eason tends to sit in the pocket. It's not that he can't extend plays, it's just that that's not really the goal when he's running the offense.
Now, if you're Coach Mason, what are you telling your guys? After Alabama, obviously a disappointing defeat, you didn't really compete at all in that game. And I don't know what the expectations leading into it were, but it wasn't that bad, I can't imagine. And then, you get another physical defense coming in the next week. You got to play the Florida Gators, and here we go 3 weeks in a row. That's tough sledding when you talk about Alabama, Florida, Georgia, back to back to back. Where's the psyche of this football team right now, you think, Alex?
Yeah, you mentioned that slate of games, and before the Bama game, they beat K-State when K-State was ranked number 18. So it's been a pretty crazy 4-game stretch. I'm not so worried about Vanderbilt's psyche anymore. They came out and played hard against Florida. The defense is concerning. Just they let Florida run all over them, 5 rushing touchdowns. And Kyle Shermer was, he had 3 touchdowns through the air, but he only completed 45% of his passes. But I saw enough where I said, okay, these guys can compete. They were only down 7, I believe, in the fourth quarter before Florida put it away. So I do think they have a shot. I think they can move the ball, enough to possibly win this game. Maybe get in the end zone a couple times. But the defense for Vandy, it really has to show up. It really has to stuff the run, slow it down enough to force Fromm to throw. And then if Fromm does throw, you have to take advantage of any mistakes he might make. And there's a lot of things that have to go right for Vandy, which should tell you why Georgia is such a big favorite this weekend.
The one difference I see in this Georgia team this year is the fact that they're locked in. Kirby's got them locked in right now. They are focused. It would have been easy for them to have a letdown last week on the road against Tennessee, and I think the final score was completely indicative of how focused and dialed in this football team is. For that reason, I'm taking Georgia this week. It's a 17.5-point spread. A lot of people writing in that the spread should be more than that, somewhere around 24, 25, something like that. Well, put your money where your mouth is. I'm sorry, your apples where your mouth is. Alex, you as well in this game, I assume?
I like Georgia as well, but be careful because nobody expected Vandy to beat them last year, and they did. And there's a chance Mason has some surprises up his sleeve defensively that might work for Vandy. So I wouldn't be too confident. I think 24-25 spread. I think that's ridiculous. Not that they can't win by that much, but to have that as a starting point, I don't think so. I think it's going to be closer than that.
There's one thing all fans can rally behind in tailgating, that is the ice-cold taste of Bud Light. Moving along, our 3rd game on the docket this week, and that's going to feature Alabama going on the road, taking on Texas A&M. Hey, Texas A&M, they've won 4 in a row after that loss to UCLA. It hasn't been pretty, Alex, but there seems to be a little bit of momentum there. You got the freshman quarterback, and, he's going to grow as the season goes along. But I was a little bit impressed by what they did defensively last week against South Carolina. In particular, that front 4 really getting some pressure on Jake Bentley.
Yeah, that's true. They did provide a lot of pressure. It even appeared as if they concussed Bentley at the end of the game. I haven't heard anything about that this week, but A&M was strong. Carolina's not the most explosive offense these days without Deebo Samuel, so it's not the greatest measuring stick, but they did the job they had to do defensively. A&M did. I look back to a couple of years ago. I was covering the A&M Alabama game at College Station. If you can believe it, A&M was actually ranked ahead of Alabama. This is 2015, post Johnny Manziel. And Bama just ran through that. I think we're going to see sort of the same setup this weekend where there's all of a sudden there's a lot of positivity, there's a lot of hope for these A&M fans. I think that's going to get crushed pretty quickly.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Saw a statistic the other day. Texas A&M's win percentage before the Alabama game, on their schedule is something like 898 or something crazy like that. And then after it is 402. A 402 winning percentage after the Alabama game. So you can't tell me that Kevin Sumlin and his coaching staff, psychologically, this doesn't have anything to do with them. You build up your mind, you're going to compete for SEC West championships, and then when you come on the field and you see these guys, it's one thing to say you're going to beat them, but Alabama from start to finish this year in each and every one of their games, Alex, has been as impressive as I've ever seen. And that's saying an awful lot for a team that just put about 15 guys in the National Football League.
That's right. I do believe in the Bama effect. I do believe that when teams go up against Bama and they lose or they get embarrassed, I think that negatively affects them moving forward. And I've even done a little bit of research on that, and I've read research on that, and it appears to be an actual phenomenon. You talk about Kevin Sumlin.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm going to steal that, because it really is. I talk to gamblers as well who look for teams the week after an Alabama game, and they're done, man. They're physically, their will has been broken. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it's a good point. I mean, teams are always focused on getting that bye week before the Alabama game. What they should be focused on is having the bye week after the Alabama game, because they need that time to basically put their lives back together and get back on the field. But, we were talking about Kevin Sumlin's splits in September, October, November, and over the past few years, I want to say he's like 20-1 in August and September, and 5-7 in November. And guess what's between that? That's the Alabama game that they have to get through every October for the most part. And I dug a little deeper, and I just looked at all games. Across months since someone was hired there, and they're just not very good at home at Kyle Field, where that 12th man is supposed to scare the opponent. For the numbers I've seen, as a home favorite, as a home underdog as they are this weekend, they're 1-4 against the spread. It's not even against the opponent. And whenever they're the favorite at home, they've been 6-14 against the spread. Against the spread, but that's very telling. I think so. And this is the sixth season of someone's regime. So I think those numbers do mean something, and it tells you that A&M, on average, they are not a very good football team at home based on expectations.
We talked about A&M's front four in the game they played last week in South Carolina. Different animal this week. They're going to have to load the box. They're going to have to bring everybody up. I would not be surprised if Jalen Hurts went absolutely crazy in this game against that A&M secondary. Alabama, they're a 26-point favorite in this one on the road in College Station, 26 points. So I think it could get ugly there on Saturday, but I hope for Kevin Sumlin's sake they can save face and compete a little bit. But I think you and I are in agreement here that Alabama's going to have a pretty easy win on Saturday.
Yeah, I hope for all of our sake that we can get a good game, a fun game to watch. I don't see that being in the cards. And you mentioned Hurts having a big game. People sort of bag on him for the way he throws the football, but he hits open receivers down the field to give them to him for the most part. So I can see Calvin Ridley running free, Robert Foster running free, a couple of their other weapons running free, and I don't think this looks good for A&M.
No, I think it's a little bit interesting in the national perspective now that you're getting some talk that maybe Clemson is 1A and Alabama's 1B. Look, Clemson's very impressive. I don't want to say exceeded expectations this year because it's early on. I think at the quarterback position they've gotten a little bit more than what most people thought that they were going to get. But you watch this Alabama machine week after week. I don't know that there is a 1A, a 1B. It's more like a 10B, a 10C. And so when you're talking about teams in the SEC, Alex, teams like Georgia, teams like Auburn, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, beating Alabama this year, I mean, I know it's early in the game. Injuries can happen, all kinds of crazy stuff, but I don't see it. I mean, they lost a national championship last year. Final play. To say that their focus is an understatement. This team is on a mission, and they're proving it week after week.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't bet on them losing, but I could see it. And you talk about these last two games of the regular season where you're playing Auburn and you're potentially playing Georgia in that title game. These are teams that can play Alabama tough. If they're having a good day, Alabama's a little off. So, especially that Auburn game, very, very old rivalry, has had a lot of crazy moments. I wouldn't look past that one quite yet, but I do think Bama's going to roll all the way up until the end of November. I'd be surprised if they don't.
He's Alex Martin Smith in Nashville. I'm Hans Heiser here in our Atlanta studios. You're watching SEC Country Live. Bud Light's prediction amongst friends. Bud Light, we don't just brew beer, we brew beer for friends. Moving along, game number 4. Game number 2 of the SEC Network's triple header on Saturday. So you could literally just put on the SEC Network at 12 o'clock and watch football until 11 o'clock at night if you wanted to. Not a bad way to spend an afternoon. But game 2, the sandwich of this, the middle part, is going to be Arkansas, South Carolina. Two teams desperately in need of wins. And, South Carolina last week, to say that they struggled running the football would be an understatement. You mentioned Bentley possibly getting concussed at the end of this game. Nothing out on that. But South Carolina's offense, ever since Samuel went down, has been a complete mess. But they're finding ways to win football games.
Yeah, I think Bentley is strong at quarterback. He still has a little bit of ways to go, especially with Samuel gone. But they are one of the more consistent teams. I sort of liken them to Kentucky, where you can kind of count on them to bring a competitive game on Saturday. And you can't necessarily say that for at least a handful of other teams. I do like the defense that they have. And I think the offense needs to just needs to find a little bit more of a spark, because Bentley hasn't had that kind of breakout year that people have expected him to have. He's been really solid, but he hasn't had these great games that he needs to have to really carry this offense.
I think having the game at home, without question, is going to benefit this team, a young football team, and they're going to grind it out. If South Carolina is going to win a game, it's not going to be one-sided. They're going to grind it out. It's going to be a last-play field goal type of situation, and that's what Arkansas does. I don't care if Arkansas, Alex, is up 25 points. It's going to come down to the last play. Both of these teams seem to have a flair for the dramatic for one reason or another, and I don't expect it to be any different on Saturday. Vegas doesn't either. They have this game at 1.5 points. Arkansas's offense was supposed to be the story coming in this year. It's had its ups, it's had its downs, but it looked like possibly last week maybe they were getting on track a little bit.
A little bit, but I'm still waiting for Austin Allen to show up, the old Austin Allen. I think if you look at just some pretty basic measurables of saying, okay, 250 passing yards, 2 or more touchdowns, and no interceptions, he hasn't done that in the past 7 games, I think it is. So he just needs to get a little bit more in rhythm and hit some more of these big throws. He's been really inconsistent. You talk about that A&M game where they lost 50 and they put up 43 points. He only had 12 completions that game. So I think he and the passing offense have a way to go. And the problem with Arkansas is they just have not finished well in the fourth quarter this year. In that A&M game, and then you go back to that TCU game where I believe it was 7-7, and all of a sudden they're losing by 3 touchdowns. They don't have that extra kick at the end of the game to put teams away. That's why I worry a little about them, and I think South Carolina brings a much more consistent defense to the field, which I think sort of gives them an edge.
Jonathan Nance, junior college transfer wide receiver for Arkansas, dismissed from the team this week. He was the leading receiver as far as yards, reception touchdowns. So somebody's going to have to step up and fill that void. You and I are on different sides of this one for once. Usually we tend to be in agreement on these things, but you're going with South Carolina. Is there a caveat here if Bentley doesn't play? Are we going to –
No, you got to stick with it, man. You got to just whatever card you put down, you stick with it. So, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't even name. I don't think that their backup has played a single snap this year. So I don't know how confident I would be in that pick without Bentley, but I hope he's able to play. I hope he's healthy. He did take that that shot at the end of the game. But I haven't heard anything this week as far as injury status or reason to think he won't play.
I'm going on the other side of this one. I like Arkansas. I don't see them falling to 2-3. South Carolina last week, they couldn't block anybody. They gave up 7 sacks, 13 tackles for a loss. We talked about how well A&M played up front, but they have some serious issues on offense. I expected that just because they're playing at home for it to be closer than it should, but I think Arkansas is the better football team. They got to start finding ways to get wins as they get a little bit more in that SEC West and some of the more difficult opponents. You look at the end of the year, if they're going to be a 6-7 win team, this is a game they have to win. Give me Arkansas in this one. Moving along, we said we'd talk a little bit about the Auburn Tigers, and Jarrett Stidham, man, so far the last couple weeks, Auburn airing it out a little bit. You got to be impressed with what the young man's doing throwing that football around for the Tigers.
Yeah, he's been pretty efficient all season, and this last week was the first game where that started to show up a little bit more in the box score. I think 264 through the air and 2 touchdowns. It was his first real starring game, just looking at traditional stats. But he has been efficient for the most part this year. You look back to their win over an FCS school earlier this year where he was 32 of 37, didn't get the ball in the end zone. But he's been slowly progressing here. I think he is beginning to live up to some of this crazy hype that followed him around in the offseason. He's shaking off the rust a little bit, getting comfortable, and hasn't really needed to carry the team yet. And I think he is trending toward having the ability to do that, so it's been exciting to watch him.
Well, Missouri's defense will do that for anybody's confidence. It'll get them pointed in the right direction, and that was not the exception last week. Big plays, though. I think he had 4 passes over 45 yards, so look for them to continue to stretch the field. And when they do that, their running game has been outstanding. But that's not sugarcoat at all. The reason Auburn is where they are this year so far is this defense. I mean, this defense, along with Georgia and Alabama, are 3 of the top 10, if not 5 defenses in the country. And they're all young players. I mean, give Auburn's defense a lot of credit for what they've done. And, that first game against Clemson, they were still trying to figure some things out offensively. And if that offensive arrow continues to point up, Alex, I mean, sky's the limit for Auburn with the exception of Alabama. Is that about right?
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier. I think they are improving. I think they are progressing toward becoming a threat against Alabama at the end of the season. I don't know if Auburn's going to get there clean, get there in position to win the West if they beat Alabama, but I do like the way that they're trending, and especially their defense has been fun to watch. You mentioned that Clemson game where their offense really couldn't have played a worse final 45 minutes of that game, and they still only lost the game by 8 points. They gave up 14. They've only given up at most 10 in any of these other games they've been playing. So that's really been the key for Auburn. And if they can get sort of this patented Gus Malzahn, they can dust that off and bring that back out there the way they did again, with Nick Marshall back in the day, with Cam Newton back in the day. I think they're going to be a really dangerous team.
By the way, a preliminary spread out for that Georgia-Auburn game, November 11th, Auburn favored by 1.5. Auburn favored by 1.5. Wow. So, a lot can happen between now and then. But if everything keeps going the right, don't forget about Florida. Everybody wants to forget about Florida. I mean, Florida's had Georgia's number for years, so we'll see. But you and I are both in agreement here. Auburn without question all day long.
Yeah, I got Auburn. I got Auburn big.
All right, moving along. Last game, we got Kentucky Wildcats at home against the Missouri Tigers. Kentucky, a little bit of a disappointment last week. They do win the game, but really struggled offensively. You just got to wonder where they're at mentally, Coach Stoops and after that debacle against Florida. This is the kind of game you have to win. Bye week next week, so this is a big one for Kentucky and Missouri. I mean, I don't know what there is else to say at this point for your alma mater, Alex.
Yeah, I was thinking about today, and this is the 127th year of Missouri football, and there's been a lot of pain, there's been a lot of bad teams, but this is really, it's right up there. I mean, you have one win against an FCS team where you give up 40-plus points, and they've just got run out of the building in the other 3 games. So thus far, it's been a complete disaster, complete disappointment, and I refuse to even give them a shred of hope in these SEC games until they can show a little bit of life. And they might this week, maybe a bye week helped. They have all this sort of talent brewing underneath the surface that is waiting to get out. But I do not trust this team right now because they just have not proved anything other than in one game they were able to pass against an FCS defense, and they couldn't stop them on their own defense. So I'm out on Missouri for the foreseeable future until they can show some signs of life here.
Yeah, they tried to put a Band-Aid over things with the Odom hire, and it's just not working out. Look for them to go in a different direction at the end of the year. I like Kentucky in this one as well. And, Kentucky, they're going to compete, Alex. They're going to be a thorn in people's side all season long. Your Georgias, your Florida, they already play Florida, but your Georgias, the rest of the teams in the East, they're not going to be a walkover. It's not the Kentucky of old. They're going to compete.
No, I like them. I like how much consistency they bring week to week, where they're going to play fairly solid defense, and that their offense is going to be able to move the ball on the ground. And it's a bummer that they dropped that Florida game at the last minute when they weren't covering anybody because you'd be sitting here at 5-0, probably maybe a ranked team, and you'd be talking about them as potentially, can they upset Georgia? Because they don't play Georgia, I don't believe, until late November. So there's a long time between then and now. A lot of stuff can happen. I'm not inclined to think Kentucky's going to win 9 or 10 games this year, but they do have a lot of pieces in place to do something like that. And the East is just such a quagmire again that I think they might have a chance to have a special season.
Alex, it's been a lot of fun, man. Appreciate you joining. If you ever want some good quality entertainment, go onto our Facebook Live page for SEC Country and read some of these comments. I could not get to them fast enough today because there's just so much hatred going on amongst these people. That's what makes SEC football so fun. There's one guy on here who's obviously not an LSU fan, but every time the LSU fan says something, he just writes TROY in all caps. So I guess he's trying to get his message out about the game last week.
Yeah, as long as they're not angry at us, Hans, I think I'm okay.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. We'll do something to set somebody up before it's all over. Alex, thank you so much, man, as always, brother. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
There he is, Alex Martin Smith in Nash Vegas. I'm Hans Heiser here. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll be back on Wednesday next week for our Bud Light predictions amongst friends. Thanks to everybody behind the glass for helping out. Bud Light does want to remind you, celebrate college football and do it safely. Enjoy the game and drink responsibly, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.